Welcome to episode 16 of The Grocery Guru with Andrew Grant. How are you?
Hi, Darren. Good morning. Yeah, very nippy, I think, is the best thing to say this morning.
Supposed to get to -10, but let's move on from how cold it is. Last week, we said to our viewers that this week we would talk about terminology. Now, I'm going to lead the charge on this one because something that we're doing wrong as an industry or as category managers or as suppliers or supermarkets is when we use terminology that the shopper doesn't understand. And I'm going to give you an example. My dad used to run, he was a produce manager in a Sainsbury's store back in the 70s. And they used to have those three-legged tables. And he used to have the best top fruit display in the area. But Dad, what's top fruit? So Andrew, what's top fruit?
Absolutely. Do you know, is top fruit apples, oranges and bananas?
Well, it's apples and pears, but I didn't know. I had to ask Dad. So there are signs that say top fruit, and I'm thinking, well, no one understands what top fruit is. When I asked Dad, he didn't know. But eventually, some years ago, I asked some guru in produce, and they said, well, it's top fruit because it grows at the top of a tree.
Okay,
now,
yeah.
These can't be terms we can use in our industry if the shopper doesn't understand them.
Well, I guess also there's, going back to your dad in the 70s, there's a lot of stuff, obviously supermarkets, kicked off in the 70s in terms of that, the superstore format. And there's probably terminology that was invented back then, maybe meant something to customers back then. Wow. But because most people are used to sticking their dinner in a microwave and heating it up for 2 minutes, it's been lost. I mean, the one that gets me, condiments. Does the average millennial know what a condiment is? And would they expect to wear it rather than eat it?
So our challenge to our viewers is the more we can use language that the shopper understands, the easier the category is to shop. And the flip side of that coin, the more we use examples that the shopper doesn't understand, the less easy it is for them to shop, the more they'll go somewhere else. So I want to give you another short story. I was buying frozen fish for a supermarket many years ago. And in the conversation I used to have on the phone with my account manager, we called two products, the most popular selling battered frozen fish, 076 and 077, which was their SKU number, because we couldn't differentiate it away from 079 and 080. That's crazy.
Well, I guess internally, it's not an issue. There's a whole industry lexicon of 3-letter acronyms, isn't there? Yeah. Or 4-letter acronyms. There's your G-SCOPs, your PORs, your LFLs. Those never, if you like, leak out to the shopper. Yep. So I guess that's okay. It's the stuff that gets in the shopper's face that they just don't get. I mean, one to flip the condiments one on its head. One of the more modern categories is world foods. Right. Now, world foods, okay, pretty broad category, but why does just about every supermarket split out pasta? Because I think pasta's a world food, isn't it? So they have a world food section, they have a pasta section.
The bit that bothers me is when we try to be the buffer. So the 076, 077 was us using it. And when I think back, we were using that term because we couldn't differentiate it. But if we couldn't, and we bought the damn thing, how the hell did the shopper at the merchant, at the fixture differentiate? And when I think now, I look back at those 4 products on the fixture, there was no difference. Now, actually, one had skin on and one didn't, but we didn't tell them that. Crazy.
Yeah. No, I guess, going back to what we spoke about last week, it's that shopper decision hierarchy. How do you please most of the people most of the time in terms of what they're looking for? So you're right, to some people, skin on skinless, they wouldn't matter because it's covered in breadcrumbs anyway. Is that the most important? Is that one of the important things they're looking for when they're shopping? So, maybe it's that it's the breadcrumbs are gluten-free. Something like that is more important to certain people than others.
And that would have been much better. We were not tough enough on understanding our category, understanding the decisions, and rooting out some big sellers because there was no differentiation. Now, here's the other one that really just, we worked with a supplier, we shall remain nameless for a moment, some years ago, and they had a cooked ham, and it was about this big, and its importance about this big, and it was 4x4. So we said to them, why do you call it 4x4? Well, it's 4x4 inches because that fits in a slice of bread.
Yeah.
But on the fixture, 4x4 was never mentioned, but this was the biggest selling product. And they called it 4x4 to differentiate it from the other sea of pink cooked meats on the fixture. Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's where obviously the marketeers need to think of the right way to sell that product, and they haven't thought about the consumer usage or the consumer benefits for it. I guess sometimes that can go wrong. What gets me is when the marketeers actually, what's the right word? Hoodwink the shopper with some of the phraseology. So, they call it, pizza Donaletta, and then it says made in Grimsby. Fresh Italian style pizza made in Grimsby. The one that always gets me is, as in the good old days, when you were driving around looking for a pub to have lunch in, and you drive past the first one and it says home prepared food. You've driven past it before you can work out that actually that means it came out of a big brakes truck. And what you're actually looking for is the home prepared, I think. No?
Home cooked, home prepared?
No, home cooked is heating up,
right.
Heated up. Home prepared is we took the lid off the packet first.
Right.
Homemade is what you're looking for.
So there's three.
Yeah, but as you can see, you've driven a couple of miles by the time you've worked out, am I getting fresh, prepared, cooked and made food in my pub, or am I just getting something that's had the lid taken off?
Yes.
With the truth.
Andrew? You're back? Okay,
Yeah,
froze for 30 seconds. Good old broad.
Okay, well, yeah. Bit like the food, I guess.
All right, let's talk about a few other examples. So I saw that even Amazon, who are obviously doing very, very well, we've got Amazon Prime Instant Video. I have no idea what that is, and I'm fairly tech savvy. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just one of the people that whenever there's something like that, I think of whether the acronym makes up something rude. So APIV, no, it doesn't. APIV.
Well, we're also working on a product slightly outside of training, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Cybersecurity. Do you know what phishing is? I've learned about phishing. Do you know what phishing is? PH. What is it?
That's sending an email with a dodgy link, isn't it?
That's it.
That you then click on.
That's it. So we've changed the training course from phishing, which people sort of can reach to something called email safety.
Yeah.
And then we also, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, does what it says on the tin is usually the best starting point for deciding what to name something.
That's very true. And we ought to turn the mirror on ourselves. So in our industry, we have things that we use in NBM like individual ILO, individual learning objective. Okay, we use that term, but actually what we're trying to say is, what's in it for you? What the hell do you want to get out of spending 5 hours training today?
Yeah.
So it happens in the training industry as well.
Yeah, that goes back to your 4x4. It should have just been called fits on a slice of bread.
It could be. And I understand what they did was by understanding there was a piece of terminology they were using the shopper wasn't, then they got to the point of sandwich ham, ideal for sandwiches, ideal for bagels. So they had different hams. Yeah. So by trying to figure out what terminology they were using that doesn't fit with the shopper, they found new opportunity.
Yeah. And I guess, talking of the bread analogy, we have toaster bread, don't we? So what came first, the toaster or the bread? Interestingly, the toaster came second, and then they reinvented the bread to fit the toaster. No, because otherwise you get a standard loaf of bread, and the top third of your slice sticks out and doesn't get nicely toasted, unless you buy square toaster bread. So I don't know if you can buy a toaster that is loaf size, but most of them are square size.
And then the other part is sometimes we need to lead the consumer, the customer, the shopper, because they won't have the vocabulary. So I'm trying to think of what categories where we've led the shopper.
Well, I think, there was the example, a couple of examples last week. Would frozen foods really exist unless the supermarkets put it all in one place?
Yeah, very true.
Because if you're cooking Sunday lunch, you're looking for again, you use our industry terminology, a main plate protein item is what shoppers look for their Sunday lunch. So are we having chicken, lamb, pork or beef?
Yep.
They don't think, right, I'm going to have chicken, it must be frozen chicken.
Yep.
We're having chicken, and then the decision is it going to be fresh? Is it going to be frozen? Is it going to be wings? Is it going to be a whole bird, etc.? So in true shopper decision hierarchy, you should put the frozen chicken portions next to the fresh chicken. But from a technical perspective, that's tough and it's very expensive. So this category called frozen foods was invented.
Yeah, true. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense. Yeah.
So yes, I guess it is the challenge of product developers, marketeers, buyers that you don't get hoodwinked by your own internal thinking and knowledge. Too much knowledge can be a dangerous thing. When you're talking about, I always remember somebody saying to me, the average shopping trip is about 45 minutes. There's 25,000 SKUs in a superstore. Divide 25,000 by 45 minutes, you're down to a decision of less than half a second per product.
Yes.
So don't make it complicated for the shopper. You're asking them to make a decision in less than half a second. So it's got to say what it does on the tin.
And I think that there are some categories like cooked ham, which to me seem like just a wall of pink. Bagged salads seem like a wall of green. But let's talk about bagged salads just for a moment. We were working with a client and we had shoppers in a room, one of those shopper focus groups, and the shoppers were picking up the bags and doing this. And we sort of had to, what are you doing? And then it reminds me of when we saw people do it with fruit. When you pick up fruit, you do this, the pressure test. Now, the consumer doesn't really have a description of what they do. They just do these things. Where we got to bagged salads is they called it bounce. If it felt sort of bouncy as a bag, thumbs up. If it didn't, they weren't going to buy it.
Yeah.
And what the supplier cleverly did was then put that in their QA, bounce, and tried to take the intangible to tangible. It has to feel like this.
Yeah.
So our challenge for our viewers is to identify 5 pieces of terminology that they use that the shopper doesn't.
No, that'd be great. Yeah, let's get our viewers to send in some. Maybe we can talk about them next week.
That'd be great, because I think every one of them is an opportunity where we are the buffer. We need to take that, identify it, and find the opportunity that sits behind it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Very good.
Okay, Andrew, so terminology this week. Any ideas what we're going to talk about next week, or are we going to keep it a surprise?
I think we keep it as a surprise. There's so much potentially happening out there that something will have cropped up by next Friday, I'm sure.
Okay. Andrew, you have a good weekend.
Take care, and you too.
Bye.
Bye.